Welcome back to the fourth video session on family law. Today we are going to focus on ancient sources of Muslim law. Muslim law is applicable to Muslims, so it is very pertinent to understand who is a Muslim. It is a well recognized principle of Shariat that who reads Kalma even once, who believes in the unity of God, and who believes Prophet Muhammad was the last prophet, and who professes Islam must be considered as Muslim. So there are basic three conditions. One, who reads Kalma even once. Second, who believes in the unity of God and believes Prophet Muhammad was the last prophet and professes to be a Musliman would be considered as Muslim. Now, before Islam was established, what was the situation in Arabistan? We can see that Islam was established after the birth of Prophet Muhammad. But before that, the situation, the condition in Arabistan was very chaotic. People were motivated by greed and other selfish motives. There was no sympathy for needy or underprivileged people. There was no state legal system. The penalties were given or administered just ad hoc in a tribal manner. Large scale immorality was prevalent there. There were no defined duties of husbands or wives or kings or anybody. So there was complete anarchy at that time. And the worst part was the position of women and slaves were miserable. Women were considered just like a commodity, just like an article. After the death of the husband, as other properties are divided among the brothers or the family members, same way even the wife used to be divided just like a commodity among the family members or the brothers. The women did not have right of inheritance. Birth of a girl child was considered as a curse and they used to be buried alive. So there were many bad conditions in that time. Even there were weird situation for marriages also, like husband himself can ask his wife to have sexual relationship with some better person of the village to have a better progeny. Same way, a woman can have sexual relation with less than 10 people and then she can select who is the father of her child and that person cannot deny. So this is as good as prostitution. So there were many weird situation at that time. Then after all these was stopped with the birth of Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Sahib was born in the desert of Arabistan in 570 AD. At the age of 40, during meditation on Hira mountain range, he received his first revelation from God through the angel Jibril, which continued for 23 years. Then he started preaching whatever was revealed to him in the meditation. But there were many orthodox people at that time who were not agreeing with the preaching of Prophet Sahib, and that is why he had to face persecution. Muhammad Sahib had to face persecution and he fled from Makkah to Medina in 622 AD, which is known as Hijrat. Again he returned to Makkah in 630 AD when Makkah was invaded and people of Makkah accepted Islam. So that is how the Islam was established in Makkah. He gave due respect to women and slaves also. So he had given the respectable position to women in the society. There are basically two sects in Muslims, that is Shias and Sunnis. There is not much difference in their ideology, but the difference is more politically motivated. After the death of Prophet Sahib, then after, who will become the religious head? That was a question. So at that time, the son-in-law of Muhammad Sahib, Ali, was considered as the Khalifa by Shias because Shias believed that the next Imam or next Khalifa can be only from the family of Prophet Muhammad. Whereas Sunnis were of the opinion that it should be an elected post and any deserving person can become the Khalifa. So the youngest wife of Prophet Muhammad, Aisha, and elected through her influence, her father Abu Bakr was elected as the Khalifa. So Sunnis believe there are 4 Khalifas. First one was Abu Bakr, then after Umar, then Usman, and then after Ali. Whereas Shias believe that there is only one Khalifa, that is Ali. So that is the basic difference between Shias and Sunnis. There are different schools of Muslim law, like we had studied schools of Hindu law, Daya Bhaga and Mitaksharam. Same way there are many schools in Muslim law. Will not go in much detail of that, just to name the few. For Shias, the basic schools are Itna Asariya or Jafri, which was established in Egypt, Ismaili or Fatimi, again it was established in Egypt, Zaydiyas and Mutazilas. For Sunnis, the main schools of Muslim law are Hanafi, established in Iraq, Malikis, established in Medina, Shafi from Egypt, and Hanabalis from Iraq. So I'll take a separate video session for discussion of schools of Hindu law and Muslim law. Right now, let's focus on the sources of Muslim law. As you have studied in Hindu law, sources of Hindu law, you have studied that there are ancient sources and modern sources. Same way in Muslim law also we have ancient sources of Muslim law and modern sources of Muslim law. Modern sources of Hindu law and Muslim law both are almost same, but ancient sources are different. So the main ancient sources of Muslim law are the Quran, Hadith or traditions, Ijma, Qiyas, customs and usage. The modern sources, just like Hindu law, they are judicial decisions, legislations, equity, justice and good conscience and textbooks. Now let's see each one of this in detail. The first ancient source and the main ancient source of Muslim law, the highest source of Muslim law, is the Quran. The Quran is the divine communication and revelation to the Prophet. The revelation to the Prophet is called Wahi. The Prophet had these revelations in last 23 years of his life, and it was written down in the time of Khalifa Hazrat Uthman. That means it is after the death of Prophet Muhammad. The revelations were made in the God's own words, containing his wishes and commands. So Quran is basically direct communication of God with the Prophet. So the words are not of Prophet Muhammad, the words are of God only. So it was revealed to Prophet Muhammad, which was communicated to people by Prophet Muhammad later on. The Quran contains moral commands. The Quran can be considered as the great legislative code of Islam. It is in Arabic and in prose. It has 114 chapters which are known as surahs, which are divided in 30 divisions. It is basically not a code of law, it is just moral commands, but it has the supreme authority in Islamic law. Second important source of ancient Muslim law is Hadith or tradition. These are precepts, actions and sayings of the Prophet, not written down in his lifetime but preserved by tradition and handed down by authorized agents. Collectively they are known as sunnahs. So basically what is Hadith? Hadith is like whenever any question arose at that time and people used to go and ask questions to Prophet Muhammad. So whatever answers he had given for those questions became the tradition and people started following it. So that is Hadith. So it includes pronouncements made by the Prophet on the occasion when questions arose for his decision. So it is believed that whatever answers he had given, those answers, his pronouncements were suggested by the God. The words were of Prophet Muhammad, but it was inspired by God. Whereas in case of Quran is both that is word as well as language and thought. Everything is of God. The Prophet Muhammad was just communicating it, but it was revealed to him in the words and thoughts by the God. Whereas in Hadith, the words are of Prophet Muhammad, but it is inspired by the thoughts of the God. It is considered that his pronouncement have been inspired and suggested by God, though expressed in his own words. They deal with the contents of the Quran, social and religious life, and everyday conduct of the people. There are basically two types of hadith: hadith Qudsi, that is sacred hadith, and hadith Sharif, that is noble hadith. Now, what is the difference between the two hadiths? Hadith Qudsi or sacred hadith, it is just complementary to the Quran, in which God himself is speaking. Just like Quran, I just explained, in Quran also the thoughts and words are of God. So just like that, in Hadith Qudsi, the God speaks. It is a complementary revelation through the Prophet. Whereas in Hadith Sharif, that is noble hadith, it contains the Prophet's own acts and utterances. So that is the main difference between Hadith Qudsi and Hadith Sharif. Third source of Muslim law is Ijma. Now, what is Ijma? Ijma is the consensus of the companions and followers of the Prophet Muhammad. In other words, we can say that agreement of the Muslim jurist on a particular question of law is known as Ijma. So, after the death of Prophet Muhammad, there were many new issues which arose, and the answers had to be given for these new issues. So, keeping in mind whatever the knowledge Prophet Muhammad had given, or what Prophet Muhammad would have done in this situation, keeping in mind that logic, his companion had given certain ideas. So after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, when fresh facts and new circumstances arose, the companions of the Prophet had to guide themselves by the light of their reason, which usages were not condemned by the Prophet. So that is known as Ijma. Shias believe that, again there is a difference of opinion among Shias and Sunnis. What Shias believe, they believe that whatever the companions of Prophet Muhammad said at that time is correct, not only in that time, but it is true even today. Their views are true even today. So there is no need for new Ijma. But Sunnis believe that they do not agree with this view, and they say that Ijma should change, keeping in mind the requirement of changing time. So it should be unanimous, and it should change as per the requirement of changing time. Ijma can be classified in three types. Ijmas given by companions of the Prophet, given by jurists, and given by people. There is no controversy, there is no difference of opinion for the first type of Ijma, that is given by the companions of Prophet. But all the Muslims do not accept the last two types of Ijmas, that is given by jurists and the people. There are certain basic requirements for a valid Ijma. First, in Muslim law, Quran is considered as the supreme authority, and after that comes Hadith. So, Ijma is at the third position. So, Ijma should not come in conflict with Quran or the Hadith. Second, once a question is decided by the Ijma, it cannot be reopened by a single jurist. And the third one Ijma can be reversed by a subsequent Ijma. Fourth ancient source of Muslim law is Qiyas. It implies analogical deductions. It is very interesting. When jurists come across some new kind of case about which the above three sources, that is Quran, Hadith or Ijma, are silent, then how to decide that case? So at that time, one can derive analogical deduction from the above three sources. So what would have been done in the time of Prophet Muhammad if this situation has arisen at that time? So one has to get some analogical deduction from the text of the previous sources. It is a process of deduction by which the law of text is applied to cases which, though not covered by the language, are governed by the reason of text. It is further said that, for example, strong drink or alcohol, strong drink is strictly prohibited in Islam. What is the reason for prohibition? Why strong drinks are prohibited in Islam? Because of its intoxicating effect. So because of the intoxicating effect, the strong drinks are prohibited in Islam, but they have not mentioned specifically that wine is prohibited or rum is prohibited, but it has to be analogically deduced that when strong drinks are prohibited, that means all kind of strong drinks which can create intoxicating effects are prohibited. So that is an analogical deduction. It was not mentioned here that this particular drink is prohibited, but all those drinks which are having intoxicating effect can be prohibited. If I give you another example, at those in those time there was no social media, no WhatsApp. So if somebody gives talaq or divorce on WhatsApp, can it be considered a valid talaq or not? So one has to deduce, one has to get the analogical deduction. Can one give distance talaq or not? So these kind of deductions are known as qiyas. But Orthodox Muslims do not accept qiyas as source of Muslim law. For example, Shias do not accept it because they believe that the development of Muslim law can be done by only imams and not even by the courts. So qiyas is not widely accepted by all the Muslims. The last important ancient source of Muslim law is customs and usage. As it was there in Hindu law also, it is more or less the same. Before the advent of Islam in Arabia, the social and religious life as well as moral, trade, commerce, etc. were governed by the customs only, because there was no state legal system before establishment of Islam in Arabistan. In India, we have Muslim Personal Law Shariat Application Act 1937, and because of which the customs and usage have lost their importance, because most of the answers we get from Shariat Act. It includes farmans and farmans given by the religious head, but the condition is farmans must be just, it should not be against the public policy, and only then it would be considered as a custom or usage and it would be considered as valid farman. A valid custom should have the following characteristics, like it must be ancient, it should not be developed just recently, it should be continuous, it was there in the ancient time and it is still continued in the recent time also. It must be clear and certain, it should be reasonable, and very important, it should not be against the morality or public policy or prevailing law. So the state law is supreme, so it should not be against the law, morality and public policy. Here I would like to discuss one case law, that is Akbar Ali versus Muhammad Ali. The important question was here was, can Mullah Sahib stop somebody from joining the collective namaz in the masjid? So again there were different customs and usage in different parts. So some were of the opinion that Mullah Sahib has the authority to stop somebody to enter the masjid for joining or for offering the collective namaz. On the other hand, there were people who believed that masjid is open for all, and so Mullah Sahib did not have any authority to stop a person. So it depends upon the custom and usage. Some people give custom and usage a higher place than qiyas. So it depends on the society whether the custom and usage is a valid custom or not. So in today's session we have seen 5 important sources of Muslim law, that is the Quran, Hadith, Ijma, Qiyas, customs and usage. Thank you so much. In the next session we'll see the modern sources of Muslim law.